Hello and welcome, everyone. I see folks are trickling in from the waiting room, so I'll take it a little slow as we settle into the space for the afternoon. But really grateful for you all for being here with us on a Friday afternoon. I know spring is on its way and the sun is out, so I appreciate you all joining us virtually. This is going to be a really great conversation, so I'm excited to dive in. And with that, I think we'll just get started. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This is a continuation of the intersectional webinar series that we started last year in 2024. My name is Danielle Hubley, and I manage advocacy and education with the Partnership for Strong Communities. It's been an incredible honor to host the series where we've been uplifting conversations with advocates and leaders in other sectors to talk about the impact that a lack of safe, stable, affordable housing has on their work. Some quick housekeeping before we dive into today's conversation. The session is being recorded and will be published to our YouTube channel. I'll have Alicia share a link in the chat. This is our playlist of all of the intersectional webinar recordings, so we'll publish it there. You'll be able to find it there. And it should be published usually within the next week or so. We are pretty quick at turning it around and getting it out to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions that you want to share with our panelists or want to engage them with today, please use the chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen to add and join into today's conversation. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible. The hour always goes so quick, but we'll try to get to as many as we can, and I'm always happy to share follow-up questions with our panelists after the conversation if there's things that you want to connect with them on that we didn't get to. So moving along, if you're looking for more places to plug into affordable housing conversations beyond today's webinar, I'm really excited to remind folks that our annual Affordable Housing Conference happens in November of every year. It is further down the pipeline from now, but I do like to put it on folks' radars that November 17th and 18th this year, we plan to host another virtual conference, so please plan to join us there. It's, like I said, fully virtual, free, so there's not really a reason not to join us. It's a great space to plug in and meet some incredible leaders across the state doing affordable housing advocacy. So I encourage you to join us there as well. But in between now and November, if you're looking for the partnership to engage in conversations with you around the affordable housing advocacy we're doing, we recently built out this presentation request form. It just allows us to better assess where we can plug in, who the best person from our team is to join any conversations that you might be interested in having the partnership participate in. So I'll have Alicia drop that link in the chat if she hasn't already, but please use this presentation request form to have us turn out to as many conversations as possible. So with that, I want to do just a quick introduction of the partnership and to talk a little bit about why we're hosting this series before I pass it off to today's speakers. So the partnership promotes equitable change in Connecticut housing policy by coordinating advocacy, advancing research, and uniting diverse partners. We carry out our mission through our partnerships. We are committed to policies and practices that reduce disparities in housing and within our organization. We work to ground our facts and data to dispel myths, challenge stereotypes, and fill gaps in knowledge that drive change. And we prioritize housing solutions that will be affordable and sustainable in the long term, focusing on the full spectrum of housing needs and experiences now and for generations to come. Our vision is that everyone in Connecticut has a safe, stable home that's affordable to them in an equitable community of their choice. And we operate under the lens that housing is a human right and orient most of our policy discussions from that lens. So how is it that we actualize our vision at the partnership? Well, we know that a healthy housing system necessitates a comprehensive approach, intertwining housing affordability, creation, choice, and stability. People need to afford their homes while meeting their other basic needs. We know we need more physical homes, period. We need all different kinds of homes for people to choose from in all communities across the state. And most importantly, people should have the right to safe, stable homes and to be supported from experiences of housing instability, eviction, and homelessness. So this is ultimately how we weave a housing system that prioritizes the needs of our residents and that supports strong families and strong communities. I think today's conversation will predominantly center around the creation bucket, but I do believe that a lot of what we're going to talk about is pretty expansive across our priorities. So excited to dive into the conversation. So really quickly, what do I mean when I say that something is intersectional? Intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. She used it to describe the double bind of simultaneous racial and gender prejudice, but it can also be more broadly defined as a framework for conceptualizing a person, group of people, or social problems as affected by a number of influences. It takes into account people's overlapping identities and experiences in order to understand the complexities that they may be facing. And the quote you see on screen right now, I love sharing simply because I think it reinforces how central housing is to so many different conversations, to so many different sectors, and to people's individual and social lives. It's not just a physical structure or a market good, it's so much more than that. In order to best support a person's health and well-being, we need to engage in holistic advocacy that addresses people's basic needs and reduces the impact that stress can have on individuals and families. The partnership testified on March 10th, earlier this month, on the bill is House Bill 7062, which was an act concerning temporary shelter units for persons experiencing homelessness or refugees and affordable housing developments located on real property owned by religious organizations, which is very much in line with the conversation we're going to be having today. And I just wanted to read a quote from our testimony that I think really captures the base of what we want to talk about today. But ultimately, what we stated was faith communities have long played a vital role in addressing social challenges, including homelessness and poverty. Permitting them to develop affordable housing aligns with their mission to serve their communities while also providing stable, safe homes for those in need. States like California and Washington have already embraced this approach, demonstrating that with appropriate safeguards, ensuring affordability, allowing religious organizations to help develop housing is a common sense, compassionate, and effective strategy to address the housing crisis. And ultimately, it's time to support policies that empower our faith-based organizations to become a part of the solution. So the bottom line is really that when we aim to achieve stability and affordability for all households, everyone benefits. And that's, again, really part of the big reason why we're here today. I want to move along to today's conversation, but really quickly, if you are not plugged into an understanding of the history of the land we live and build on, I want to encourage you to check out this website, nativeland.ca, to learn a little bit more about the history and the relationship to tribal nations that exist in Connecticut. We have a lot more work to do there, but this is a great place to plug in and start that learning. And without any further ado, I'm so excited to kick it off to today's presenters to guide us through today's conversation, where we'll talk a little bit more about development practices among faith leaders, opportunities for advocacy, and things that have been going on outside of Connecticut and inside of Connecticut. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Jim Horan with LISC, Connecticut, to take us from there.
Thanks so much, Danielle. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you today about the intersection of affordable housing and faith-based communities. This is a really timely conversation. We've been hearing a lot at LISC about this topic from various faith communities across the state in cities, suburbs, and rural areas. So I'm Jim Horan, Senior Executive Director of LISC Connecticut. LISC is the Local Initiative Support Corporation. We're a national community development financial institution. We do a lot of work around affordable housing and community development financing, as well as working with community development corporations across Connecticut. In addition, we have a network of financial opportunity centers. We have an early child care facilities fund, and do a lot of other work that's basically designed to help address the needs for affordable housing in our state. We have a great lineup here for you today, including Dr. Ruth Jones-Nichols, who is the Executive Vice President for Local and National Programs at LISC, as well as Darrell Brooks from Beulah Land Development Corporation, and Cori Mackey, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Leadership and Justice in Hartford. We'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. Dr. Ruth Jones-Nichols is going to be our first presenter, and we'll have a few minutes for Q&A right after she speaks because she has to leave a little early from the webinar today. Then we'll go to Darrell and Cori and have more time for questions and answers at the end of the session today. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ruth Jones-Nichols. She joined LISC just last year, and before that, she was with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where she had served as the senior advisor to the secretary, and prior to that, as the deputy assistant secretary for public engagement at HUD. During that time, she actually helped to develop the HUD toolkit that she's going to talk about today with folks at LISC. So it's a great intersection there of work from LISC as well as HUD. And this toolkit is a really great guide that will help both faith-based organizations as well as municipalities, nonprofit and for-profit developers, and others who are involved with the development of affordable housing. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Dr. Ruth.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. As Jim said, I joined LISC last year, and it's been almost 9 months since I started in this position. I've been traveling across the country since then, visiting our local markets, including Connecticut, and it has been certainly a joy for me to meet with our colleagues and our stakeholders in the different communities. In my role as Executive Vice President for local and national programs, I have the honor of working with leaders in 37 urban markets and our national rural program. I've been meeting with stakeholders, as I said before, who are truly committed to creating communities of opportunity for all. One of the consistent themes throughout my travel has been a desire to address the critical needs for diverse, accessible, and affordable housing. That recurring theme is, in part, one of the reasons why I am honored to join this webinar today, focused on the intersection of affordable housing and faith-based communities. As you heard from the introduction, prior to joining LISC, I was at HUD, and in that role, I was fortunate to work directly with the Secretary of HUD on public and strategic engagements. As we were traveling around the country to talk about the affordable housing crisis in America and HUD's strategic goal to increase the supply of affordable housing through development, preservation, and innovation, we heard from our partners. And in particular, we heard from faith leaders who expressed an interest in understanding how they could work with HUD and our grantees to co-create solutions that would positively impact their communities. In one of the meetings where we heard from faith leaders, we also heard from individuals who were in public office. And when we were meeting with the New York Attorney General's office and the New York University Forum Center and faith leaders, they shared some findings from a 2024 research report. And the findings confirmed that faith-based organizations own more than 92 million square feet of land across 5 boroughs in New York City. That's directly from a 2024 research report that they were previewing for us in that meeting. Now, 92 million square feet of land across 5 boroughs in New York City, one might say, what does that really equate to? And they confirmed that it's more than 2.5 times the size of Central Park. And for those of you who haven't visited Central Park, you should know that Central Park is 843 acres. So in New York alone, faith-based organizations own land that could be utilized to create housing that is affordable for all income levels. But what we know from our travel and what you know in Connecticut is that that opportunity exists in many communities, including across the state of Connecticut. We talked to folks in California, Texas, North Dakota, Virginia, Ohio. Wherever we went, we heard similar stories. There was a willingness to partner. There was a desire to learn more about how to partner. And there was a request for HUD to provide resources that would help inform key constituents on best practices in partnerships. That, in fact, led to the development of the toolkit that I will talk about today. And our Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships took the lead in working with LISC along with the Office of the Secretary. Now, one of the reasons why we selected LISC to work with HUD was because of LISC's deep experience in providing technical assistance and its expertise in housing as well as community and economic development. And I stress that because toward the end of my remarks, I'll share an example of how our local offices are working with faith communities and other constituents in the community to create affordable housing. Let me talk first, though, about the actual grantee guide, because when we heard from faith leaders and we heard from other stakeholders about the need to really provide a resource that would be foundational in increasing knowledge, we wanted to be extremely intentional about the guide developed in partnership with LISC. And so, as you probably already know, working with faith-based organizations on affordable housing development as a guide provides information and tools that really support organizations as they are producing and preserving affordable housing. This toolkit really is an introduction to how various entities, whether it's local government, housing authorities, or community-based organizations, can work with faith-based organizations on affordable housing development. I was really excited that we were able to include a number of case studies as well as various tools or training materials that support effective partnerships. The toolkit is organized into 3 parts or sections because we wanted to really make it easy for various stakeholders to understand the information that was being presented. Whether, again, it was a local government entity, a public housing authority, a policymaker, a community or faith-based organization, we thought, again, it was just very important to make something digestible that is oftentimes very complicated. The first part of the toolkit really provides that foundational information that I referenced before. It's about creating the building blocks for understanding, and we work to frame the issues first and foremost related to housing supply and the crisis across America, particularly for low to very low income households. We talk in the toolkit about the lack of affordable housing. And you know some of the reasons why there is a lack of affordable housing, whether it's rising construction costs for materials, labor, and land that make it difficult to build affordable homes, zoning and regulatory barriers. In some communities, we know that single-family zoning laws restrict the development of duplexes, townhomes, or multifamily housing. We talk about even the lack of skilled workers and how that contributes to the crisis that we're experiencing. We believe that as of last year, at least, that there were probably about 7 million units of affordable housing missing from the neighborhoods where we show up. And that number is from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and it takes into consideration units that are deeply affordable for low to very low income households. So framing the issue was really important because we heard from faith communities and faith leaders in particular. We do ministry. we don't necessarily do housing. And so we need to better understand what some of the challenges have been in terms of producing and preserving affordable housing. So that information was there. We also worked in this toolkit to introduce new ways of thinking about how faith-based organizations can be leveraged to mitigate some of the issues by being partners in housing development projects, community mobilization initiatives, and advocacy efforts, which Danielle talked about at the beginning of this webinar. This toolkit provides an overview of funding sources available through the federal government, because we heard folks say, I'm not even familiar with the public and private resources that exist to support housing development efforts. So we include that information. We also included local and state policy considerations, because we know that sometimes policies represent barriers, and I know that we will talk about that even more today. We didn't include specific examples like what we saw in California, and I think it's important to call that out. Senate Bill 4, which is also known as the Affordable Housing on Faith Lands Act, was signed into law in October 2023. And laws such as this make it easier, but not completely easy, for faith organizations to be involved in housing development efforts. This law in particular provides a streamlined process for religious organizations to develop affordable housing on their property, regardless of local zoning restrictions. Specifically, the law provides a ministerial approval process for 100% affordable projects located on land owned by religious institutions. So there are examples across the country of laws that have been enacted at the state level, or policies that have been enacted at the local level to enable housing developments that are created in partnership with faith-based organizations. And for that California example specifically, I invite anyone who is interested in learning more to follow up with our LISC Bay Area colleagues directly. Also within the toolkit are, I think, some pretty important resources, such as assessments that help faith-based organizations and potential partners understand if they're even ready to move forward with a partnership focused on developing or preserving affordable housing. Some of the key questions that are posed in these assessments include: does your mission directly support or align with the development of affordable housing and the shared vision of your members? What we saw when talking to folks was a consistent theme that faith leaders are often bought into the idea of supporting affordable housing development efforts, but there should be an effort to bring members along. And so this was a key question to pose as part of one of the assessments. Another key question was, are you legally constituted as a 501c3 in good standing? That's important, not just in terms of understanding if you can be a partner, but also if you are in a position to receive or leverage financial assistance that may be available from the government. We ask questions about governance structure. We ask questions about whether or not land is actually owned by the faith-based institutions. And then again, questions about financial health allow us to understand with faith-based partners the extent to which they are ready to move forward. Ultimately, we thought that these were important questions to help faith-based organizations evaluate if they have the mission, the organizational structure, the legal authority, and the financial vitality to use land and resources to support and partner in the development or acquisition of affordable housing. But there are other more technical questions also focused on zoning and property valuation, to name a few. We knew again that this part of the toolkit was so important in setting a baseline understanding for partners, including faith-based organizations in particular. As I said before, we heard from faith leaders over and over, we do ministry, we don't necessarily do housing, but we want to be involved in co-creating housing solutions as an expansion of our mission. Which means we need to understand the basics. So in the first part of the toolkit, our goal was to make sure we provided basic information that would increase each stakeholder's understanding. But in the second part of the toolkit, which I think is also really exciting, we really delve into the actual housing development process. And there's a high-level overview of the affordable housing development process for those with limited experience. This section actually walks stakeholders through pre-development activities to construction and operations, as well as the types of financial resources that can be leveraged to pay for activities in each phase. Again, we heard over and over, give us an understanding of what should go into being ready to move forward with this type of effort. And so being able to walk folks through the actual activities from vision to reality was something that we intentionally embedded within the toolkit. We also talked in the toolkit about potential roles for partners because we recognize that even if a faith-based organization became interested in an affordable housing development project, that it wouldn't be something they could do on their own most likely. And so we talk about partner roles to include what it means to be an owner of property, what it means to be the developer, what the role of an attorney might be, or an architect, or a general contractor, or a financial advisor, or a property manager, or even a service provider. In places where we saw where faith-based organizations had already been involved in affordable housing development projects, we saw housing plus models. So senior housing with a federally qualified health center on the first floor, or housing for families with a community center or childcare on site. These were very exciting models. And so when you think about housing, there's the opportunity for a housing plus model when you consider the role that a service provider could play. The other thing that this section does is really provide a realistic timeline for how long it could take to move a project from vision to reality. Sometimes folks think it's going to happen overnight, and we know that isn't the case. And so there are examples to show how it could take anywhere from 3 to 5 years or 8 to 10 years, again, reinforcing that projects take time. I said this before, but I'll say it again because it was one of the key takeaways that we wanted to embed within the toolkit. And it really is that no single faith-based entity should most likely take on a project alone. And so there are helpful tools within the guide that can assist in exploring joint venture opportunities and even requesting proposals from potential developers. Now, we vetted this information with faith-based partners and with other stakeholders as we were developing the toolkit. And folks said, okay, this is all great, but now we actually want to learn about some best practices in terms of where it has been done. And so the last part of the toolkit includes faith-based partnership case studies. And we were very thoughtful about including case studies that really represent a wide spectrum of successful projects. These projects, again, are not only meant to demonstrate the intersection between affordable housing and faith communities, but also elevate some key lessons from the partners as they shared them with us. I'll call out just a few of the case study examples for those who have not had an opportunity to review the toolkit. There's one example from Kalamazoo, Michigan, that is focused on a nonprofit faith-based organization that provides senior housing. And through their case study, we elevated a preservation strategy that looks at lowering costs for seniors through climate resiliency work and energy efficiency areas. There's also a case study example from Fargo, North Dakota, and it focuses on acquisition and rehabilitation, or an adaptive reuse project, and permanent supportive housing. And this was an example of a faith-based organization that owned land and transferred it to a community-based organization focused on providing housing and supportive services. And through the land and the existing facilities on that land, the community-based organization was able to engage in an adaptive reuse project to create affordable housing for women and children. In Brooklyn, New York, we elevated a case study that really is about multiple faith organizations coming together as part of a coalition to advocate for policies and a transfer of land to that faith-based entity in order to create new construction, single family and multifamily homes that would serve as rental and home ownership opportunities. And so this is where a group of faith-based organizations that did not own land advocated for the transfer of land that could then be used to develop affordable housing. So in these case studies, not all of the faith-based organizations started out with their own land. In some cases, it was land that was transferred to them to then work with a developer and other partners to create communities of opportunity. I'll end this case study overview with a highlight of a slightly different example, and it is from the LISC Bay Area, where one of our offices has actually created a program called Faith Plus Housing. And this housing helps faith-based and other community-based organizations who own property in the San Francisco Bay Area to evaluate whether or not it's even feasible to develop affordable housing on their underutilized land. This program was launched in 2018 after a local coalition of faith-based organizations successfully advocated for funding to support their ability to take advantage of a $600 billion affordable housing bond that was passed by Alameda County, where Oakland and Berkeley are located. Since then, the program has been expanded, and a total of 40 faith-based and community-based organizations have participated. And through their participation, there are collectively 1,200 units of affordable housing that have either gone through pre-development or have started construction. And so we're really excited about how that program effort has been evolving, and the role that LISC played, which I think is the role LISC is uniquely positioned to play. It's all about designing and delivering targeted technical assistance that provides hands-on training, one-on-one project-specific guidance, and startup financing over a 12 to 24-month period. We're excited about that work being done, again, in the Bay Area, but that work is being done in other communities where we have local offices, including our local office in New York specifically. So look forward to building out our technical assistance support for faith communities interested in the intersection with affordable housing. And I'll end just by answering one question, which may be, where do we get started? If you are a faith-based organization that has joined this call or this webinar today, obviously you can get started by first just picking up the toolkit and reviewing it. But I think more importantly, asking the critical question, does your mission directly support or align with the development of affordable housing and even the shared vision of your members? It is important, obviously, to have that mission alignment, but also that vision alignment, because that key thing can make the difference between whether or not your project takes 3 to 5 years, 8 to 10 years, or isn't able to move forward at all. If the answer to the question is yes, then walk through the resources and consider a partnership with LISC based on our expertise in providing technical assistance, our ability to ensure access to capital, and our ability to co-create community building solutions. This is ministry work where everyone can play a part, and I'm so thankful for the discussion that will take place throughout this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ruth. That was terrific. Really appreciate your overview of the HUD toolkit and the work that you did while there, and the examples in the toolkit. We are a little behind on time, and I don't see any questions in the chat right now. I do appreciate that Danielle has put the link for the toolkit, for the guide in the report, and we're happy to talk further with anybody here at LISC Connecticut. And Dr. Ruth mentioned, for example, connecting with the folks in the Bay Area. We would be happy to facilitate that kind of conversation. So are there any burning questions, though, from participants that you want to ask Dr. Ruth? All right, not seeing anybody right now. So much, thank you so much, Dr. Ruth. And we'll follow up if there are questions for Dr. Ruth. We can get them to her afterwards. So, all right, great. Thank you so much. So we're going to move on and meet with our next speaker today, who is Darrell Brooks, the CEO of Beulah Land Development Corporation in New Haven, which is affiliated with Beulah Heights First Pentecostal Church. It's in the Dixwell and New Hallville neighborhoods of New Haven. Over the years, Beulah Land has developed 50 units of affordable home ownership and rental housing in the neighborhood, and it is completing a mass timber construction multifamily affordable housing development, the first on the East Coast, and I'm sure Darrell will tell us about that as well. Another thing to know about Darrell is that he serves on numerous boards of nonprofits in New Haven, including, and I don't know if this is current or former service, but president of the Community Action Agency of New Haven board, as well as New Haven Family Alliance. And we really appreciate, maybe that was a while ago, but we appreciate all the work that Darrell does. We work closely with him at LISC Connecticut, and are really thrilled that he's able to share his work with us here today. Darrell.
Thank you, Jim. I greatly appreciate the benefit of being here today. Thank you for asking me to be here. Certainly, Dr. Ruth Jones Nichols really, kind of right up our alley. Beulah Land Development Corporation was formed out of Beulah Heights First Pentecostal Church here in New Haven, in particular in Dixwell, and primarily was formed because of some horrific challenges that really plagued Dixwell. One particular incident that happened where an 18-month-old baby's life was claimed, and the grandmother who was babysitting that baby was paralyzed. And that was the idea of really changing the fabric of our community. The church has recently just celebrated its 100 years of existence. When it initially moved into the community, it's always been in Dixwell, but when it moved in its current location, the block was anchored by homeowners and landlords. And there were investors, there were stakeholders who had an investment in their community. Over time, that changed drastically, and people became to disinvest in their community. And as a result of that, blight and disrepair and crime was rampant. And being a community of faith, and people often ask, and that's why I appreciate Dr. Ruth sharing that, ministry is one thing that communities of faith do well. But community development, which I personally believe is an extension of our faith. That's the other thing that we don't really, kind of delve in. And oftentimes when these kind of issues plague our community, the question is, what do we do? How do we turn this around? And so our founder and former executive director, Bishop Brooks, established Beulah for the purposes of creating opportunities for individuals to own their own home. And so it was a challenging time for us to do that, because as Dr. Ruth pointed out, we do ministry, and so housing is something that we did not do. But our very first project, we partner up with LISC and other like-minded advocates to help us put together this plan to provide home ownership opportunities. And so faith really guides our principle. Faith guides why we do this work. And so sometimes the challenges, given today's challenges that we're facing, having a conversation with folks at LISC here, and just currently right now in our country, we're just dealing with some issues and challenges that have created additional barriers. There are already barriers to affordable housing and community renewal and redevelopment, but now there's new additional barriers. So there's certain language that you can't have that makes you, a target. And so those are the kind of challenges that as a community we face, and as a faith community, we kind of lace up our boots and move forward. And so those are some of the challenges that we're facing today. And so, but I have to say, there's a song that we sing in church, and forgive me for taking you all there, but the song is entitled "We've Come This Far by Faith." And I would have to say to all of you that we certainly have come this far by faith. Since 1994, we've established over 54 units of rental and home ownership opportunities. This late spring, we hope to add an additional 69 units. Those units, that project that you see behind me, that is a mass timber project, which is cross-laminated timber. It is the first of its kind in the East Coast. It's deeply affordable. 55 units of the 69 are going to be for those families who are at 30% of the median income to 50 to 60% of the median income. And so we're extremely happy and excited about that. And the idea of being able to be in this type of project, it's mass timber, so it's made out of cross-laminated wood, as I established, and so it is a passive house design. So the tenants are going to be living in these buildings at reasonable, affordable rates, where 14 of the units are going to be set aside for folks who are at risk for homelessness. And then imagine almost having a net zero energy bill that every month. And so, again, the premise of Beulah was to establish an opportunity for individuals to, if they own their own home, to be able to have wealth, and to be able to use that as a building block to move to the next level in terms of creating an opportunity. And I'll end on this note. There's a young lady now sits on my board who joined Beulah as a result of one, being able to own their own home. And she indicates that she came in, she became a part of our program, and this was over 24 years ago, and struggled in her lifetime in terms of housing, substance abuse, and so, but she was able to get herself cleaned up. She was able to buy her first home that she ever lived in, and this home was so affordable that she was able to pay it off. She was able to retire from her job. She's debt free, and now, because of unforeseen circumstances, is raising her grandchildren. But she has the capacity to do that, and is looking to leave this piece of real estate to her children. And so So that's why we do this work, to be able to transform individual lives and give them the ability to go to the next level. And so we're excited about, and there's one thing that I'll mention this and then I promise I'll end here. We have 19 more units in the pipeline, home ownership and rental. And so we're excited about our development opportunity that's in front of us, because it gives us an opportunity to be able to continue to do the work that we do. 98% of our homeowners are women and BIPOC, and or BIPOC. We have a 0% foreclosure rate on the initial mortgage of the home. Not too many nonprofit or for-profit entities can say that. Over 10 million has been given out to subcontracts to local minority contractors and community-based minority-based enterprise organizations. So we're excited about those opportunities to really impact and transform communities on a complex scale, but allow us to transform communities by being an opportunity or a beacon of hope for those who ordinarily would not have that opportunity. And so I will end there. Again, Jim, thank you for the invitation, allowing me to come and to share just a bit of our story about what we do here at Beulah.
That was great, Darrell. Thank you so much. Really terrific story about the mission alignment that Dr. Ruth had talked about between your faith community and the work that you're practicing in the community, and how it is transformative for the community as a whole and for individuals like the woman you said who's been able to buy her first home and now can pass that on to her grandkids and build wealth in that way. Yeah, we love it. That's what we want to see with our work. So that's really fantastic. So we're going to shift gears and we'll have time for questions of Darrell after we have our next speaker, our final speaker, who is Cori Mackey, the Executive Director of the Center for Leadership and Justice in Hartford, which used to be known as the Christian Activities Council. And its mission is to develop leaders who collaboratively work for social justice. And I know that Cori has long been involved in social justice throughout her career, and really appreciate her being here today to talk about the work of the center, as well as the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance, that is a program of the Center for Leadership and Justice. So Cori, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jim. And I just want to say, wow, thank you for the opportunity to be here, but I'm so inspired by the work of Darrell and his community, and Dr. Ruth was just, that workbook is just amazing and is so spot on. So thank you for your contributions. So I think our work, where we fit in today, we are not the housing experts, but we are the folks who, when congregations say, all right, ministry is important, but we want to make concrete, long-term systemic change, how do we do that? That's where we sort of come in and help. And one of the things, congregations have a long and important history of meeting immediate needs and doing direct service in the work of charity, which is so vital and critical these days now more than ever. But we're also called to do the work of changing systems so that those social service needs decrease over time, because folks are able to sustain themselves and their families. But moving from the work of charity to the work of justice for congregations is really challenging for a number of reasons. But one is that you need a vehicle to do the work of justice, because you need power. We have to aggregate our power. A congregation on its own is pretty limited in what they can do in the world of changing policies if they don't have ways to work with others. And so what we do at GIA is we help aggregate the power of our congregations around Greater Hartford to build that power, and then through the process of sharing stories about what impacts both the members of our congregations, but also those who are very low income and struggling in our communities, we identify the issues that we can work on where we have shared values. So housing inevitably comes up all the time when we do our listening campaigns, and has been a key issue. Sorry, let me take a step back. So we formed the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance out of the Center for Leadership and Justice to be that vehicle for congregations. Housing since the beginning has been, I think between housing and mental health, the number one talked about concern and issue of our congregations, and often with a desire to have more affordable housing in their communities. So we've done a couple different things. We've supported some statewide efforts, legislative efforts. But what we found is that so many of our members who have this sort of deep desire to see affordable housing happen, we really just knew so very little about how you actually get to affordable housing. How does it work in our towns? And given our 169 town beautiful structure that we have in Connecticut that makes it so easy to do this work, we struggled with kind of cookie cutter approaches or methods to helping our congregations figure this out, and realized that what we needed was to be really close and proximate to the issues in our town to understand how to engage. So we formed housing action teams. This past November, we launched this effort. And the idea is pretty basic, but we think will have a big impact down the road, which is that rather than work by congregation, because our members tend to come from a bunch of different towns, we formed teams across our congregations based on where people live. So for example, if you might worship at a church in Asylum Hill, but live in Simsbury, we put a call out to all of our Simsbury GIA members, or to all of our towns, and said, hey, if you're interested in affordable housing, would you like to join a housing action team? And if so, what we will do is provide you basic training on organizing. So yes, it's true that there's a lot of market reasons that the development of affordable housing is challenged in communities, but there's also a lot of, as we know, intentional reasons that are based in a community's power to keep out folks that they don't want in their towns. It's not the only reason, but we have to understand those power dynamics, or else we're just going to be running into brick walls. And so we provide training on how to assess the power in your particular town. Like, what are the barriers? What kind of power do we have to build to overcome the barriers that are not just market barriers? And so we provide that training, and then we also are providing really basic affordable housing 101, so folks at least have some common language when looking at their town structure. And then we developed a workbook, our members developed it, that the housing teams are filling out together, so that if you live in, let's say, West Hartford or Avon or Glastonbury or Hartford, you can actually fill out this workbook, but you learn it together. You don't have to do a ton of research, but just figure out, do you have a zoning board or commission, or is it a town council that has the power, and who's on that town council, and when do they meet, and what have been the projects that have been tried, what has failed, why have they failed? And so it's really just exploring what has happened in your town to have a better understanding of what's going on, to assess where can we have the most impact as people of faith wanting to weigh in and engage in this. So that has just started. We have teams that have formed, I think, in 6 or 7 towns right now. We have 35 towns represented in our GIA membership. And so it's exciting, and folks who have been lifelong advocates and organizers are realizing how much we didn't know about housing and how much we're learning. And it's creating a lot of energy, and folks are sharing across towns, and some towns are coming together to do this work. And one of the key things is that the first thing we do is ask, who's working on this? What are the current projects? And so if there's a place where we can come along, we're not there to reinvent the wheel. And so we're coming along with a lot of existing efforts right now. And so that's the housing action teams, and non-GIA members can be a part of them. And each one is sort of developing and moving along at its own pace. So that's the other thing I was asked to talk about. We also we have deep concern for housing protections, tenant protection. So we're supporting in an advocacy effort this year, House Bill 6889 on Just Cause, trying to expand the protections that already exist for folks who are, I think, at 65 and above, that really just prevent landlords from evicting someone just because the lease comes to an end. There has to be a good cause, not a good cause, a just cause, a reason for that eviction. And so we've had many people testify and advocate on those issues. And if anybody's interested in joining that effort, I'm happy to link you up with the advocacy efforts around that statewide legislation that's waiting to be called in the House this session, so we can hopefully move it along. So I know we're running low on time, so I will stop there.
That was great, Cori. Thank you so much. And as you said, the housing action teams, it's such a simple concept, but it's so necessary because what we find repeatedly in this work is that so often the NIMBY, not in my backyard folks come out anytime that there's an affordable housing development or any type of housing development really, but especially for affordable housing. And so having those housing action teams and people who will come out in support and tell their local planning and zoning commission or the other decision-making bodies at the local level about their support is really important. So we are running short on time, but I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions if people have questions for Cori or Darrell. All right, there's been so much fabulous information. It might be a little overwhelming right now, but this session will be recorded. And if you signed up, as you did, you'll get the link, and we encourage you to share with others too, if they're interested in hearing the great information that Cori, Darrell, and Dr. Ruth shared today. And Danielle, I'm going to shoot it back to you because I know you want to talk about opportunities for advocacy and close this out. So really appreciate everybody joining today. And I'll just say too, if there are ways that you might want to connect with LISC, if for your faith community or other group to continue to do this work, please reach out to me or my colleagues at LISC. Thanks very much, and back to you, Danielle.
Thanks so much. And yeah, thank you everybody for being here. This was an incredible conversation. I'm so excited for our faith communities to be active leaders and continue to be active leaders in housing advocacy. It's a really important intersection. And as I think everybody kind of iterated here, you know, housing is one of those really crucial center points where a lot of us are going to come together and need to be active advocates to make sure that we're uplifting the standard of living for everyone who lives in our state and eventually beyond the state of Connecticut. But I wanted to really quickly in our last few moments here, just draw your attention to, as everybody alluded to, there are opportunities to take action. Right now, we are in the last few months of our legislative session in Connecticut. So there is still very important places to plug in and connect with your elected leaders. It's important for them to hear from you about the experiences that you're having in your community and that they're being responsive to the experiences that you and your community members are naming. I wanted to direct your attention to our Take Action page. This includes opportunities to submit testimony. We have some template language, but you can expand on that language that exists from that template to reach your elected officials directly. You can also stay connected. If you sign up on this page, you'll receive regular action alerts, opportunities to engage your elected officials, more learning opportunities in the housing space. And then, like I said earlier at the onset of this conversation, we'll have our Affordable Housing Conference at the end of this year in November. And we're also really excited to uplift that in September of this year, the National Pro Housing YIMBY Town Conference will be coming to New Haven, Connecticut. So if you're looking to plug in with some national folks and build some more relationships in the YIMBY mindset, it's a great place to plug in. I know partnership folks will be there. So thank you so much. This was an incredible conversation. And Jim, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think Darrell wanted to mention something about YIMBY.
Yeah,
Go for it.
So I did not realize it was going to be a part of your Take Action. And so I sit on the advisory committee for YIMBY. It's going to be here in New Haven. And so I certainly would welcome all of you all to be a participant in that. I think it's extremely important to really begin to synergize all of our advocacy to really create opportunities for affordable housing. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to lift that up, and thank you for putting it in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. All righty. Well, with that, we've hit the hour. Like Jim mentioned, there will be a recording. We'll make sure that we share it out with everyone who was here or everyone who registered for the event, and it'll be on our website and YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Please stay in touch, and grateful to be in community with you all this Friday afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.